I would like to introduce you to our AMP solution. The title says like the critical missing piece in your IT environment. And most of the time it's missing and the people don't even know that it's missing. Yeah, I would like to talk about that topic. And the agenda would be like, why you should secure, defend, empower, and how cyber attacks work most of the time. If we follow afterwards how the attack has been done, you will realize it's always the same procedure attackers are following. And what is the critical missing part in your IT infrastructure? And of course, what we can do for you to have a solution in place and have your IT network secure or secure your partners, customers' IT networks. It's all about secure, defend, empower. And in the end, then, it's your mission, should you choose to accept it, to protect your network, right? So, what means secure, defend, empower? For us, it simply means that you can connect securely to all your devices. It doesn't matter if it's like laptops or desktops or servers or mobile devices from anywhere without utilizing VPN. And this is something unique on the market that you can give third-party vendors or people outside your company access to your systems, not giving them the right to go into your network. They will stay outside all the time but still be able to access the system. And then the second part is you can take away people's admin rights and still enable them to do the work they need to do, but just the work they need to do and not more than that. And the last thing and most important thing is that you can do that in a way where people will stay productive. It's not a complicated process or something you need to establish where you have to go through I don't know how many gates. It's a simple matter of fact that the architecture itself gives you the opportunity to stay productive and to reduce your costs and still work in a very secure way. So, cybersecurity means you are building a big wall around you. And in these days, the digital footprint is increasing, so it's not longer enough to use the classical methods of securing your network, right? Because if you see now in the next slides how attacks work, usually they are always done in the same way. So how does it work for an attacker? When you look at the next slides, you will realize that in the recon phase, 90% of all attackers will spend their time simply in that stage, using public information, social engineering, social media, dark web, whatever. And next would be then to think about infiltration. Once they got the information in the first phase, they try to infiltrate your organization or your IT simply. And then in the end, it's exploration. Once they're inside, they have enough time to explore your IT, to explore the systems, security codes, and all that. So when they have done all their steps, they are really inside your network, which means like, what can you do about it? What is the big problem you need to solve? In most use cases, if you see why you should secure remote access, if you see studies from, for example, TrustWave, unsecured remote access is still #1 method of hacking. If you remote access systems, maybe from your customers, or you have companies doing the operation for you in your company, and they're from outside, and you're giving them remote access. It's simply like that really 90% of the stuff where breaches happen is remote access. If you see, for example, warnings of RDP attacks, how they rise, and that even FBI is warning regarding that stuff, you should really consider, like, at least to think about it, like how many RDP stuff is exposed. There are even RDP credentials in the dark web you can find for, I don't know, $10. You can buy an hacked RDP credential. That's a picture from a dark web page where you can simply buy that stuff, like from, I don't know where the servers are and who them belong to, but it's as easy as that. So, as you see, it's not secure enough to use the standard methods of giving people VPN, giving people the opportunity to use RDP and use standard credential to log onto the system again. So, what's the solution we give you from BeyondTrust? So, the first big problem to solve is, as I said, remote access. It's simply the number one attack. So the point is, like with our solution, you can apply more security walls before the system is really accessed. For example, you can have approval workflows, or you can integrate with your incident management. Let's say like someone needs to access the system, and there should be an incident ticket for it already done and approved, so you know for sure that the system has to be accessed for that purpose. The second point is, like, if you see, for example, Gartner's top 10 security projects for 2018, or other online studies, you will always find out that the privileged account management is also there you need to follow. So, once you have the secure remote access established and people can access the system, there is still the second point, which is they need to log on to the system with a credential you are providing usually to them. And that credential has usually admin rights on the system because they are doing work for you. They need to have that right to get their work done, right? But how do you know what they do with their password you have given to them? Are they posting it somewhere? Are they writing it down somewhere? What is the, you never know about credentials, like how people handle that. Because most of the time the error is not the IT, the error is the human being not being able to take care about the passwords, for example, credentials. So the second point you need to look at is privileged credentials simply. You need to identify your privileged credentials, like what are, for example, local administrators on all my systems, or how do I identify which local admin passwords haven't changed since 2008? I mean, if you see, like, if we use our detection software, for example, you can download from our homepage and just run it or a scan to get a report. You will, after a 5-minute scan, probably realize that you have like around 5 accounts with admin privileges on some system, which password haven't been changed since, I don't know, 2,000 days or something, because this user is running 5 services on top and no one dares to touch it, and all the usual IT stuff you have simply. So how will you get a clear picture about your security of accounts in your IT? with our software, you're easily able to immediately recognize on which systems, which users have what privileges, and you can easily get them into management in our solution. So our solution is managing the software and the users simply to protect those credentials, and they're still easily available for you to use them. So the next problem you would want to solve is, like, imagine you have a secure way of connecting to a system. Then you have a secure way, once you're connected, to use admin credentials and to get them injected into that session, so the user working on the target system doesn't even know the password of the admin user he's using. But the last piece to make that thing around is, like, people have simply too many privileges. I mean, let's say your company has an administrator for one system, and this administrator has dedicated tasks on that system, which is managing whatever, but he needs, for the software, for the management software, he needs admin rights, right? But why should this person be able to manage the whole server, to shut it down, to remove any drivers or update drivers? He should just be able to run his software in admin mode to do his job, right? The rest of the system shouldn't be touchable to him. So the problem to solve with us is, the first is remote access, which we are solving by giving you the possibility to have a centralized appliance-based solution where you are managing who has access to what system at a time. How does it all work? I mean, usually if you give rights to anyone in your network who is outside your company, most of the times you're forced to use VPN because there is no other technology enabling you to do it in a different way, right? So the point is about breaking the connection, and our solution is an appliance-based solution where we just have outbound connections to the appliance. So if you realize, like, on the right side, we have the target systems which should be accessed. And on the left side, we have your third-party vendor accessing that system. But to be able to access those systems on the right side, you don't need to allow any connection from the appliance to boards inside the network. It's enough to allow a firewall connection, for example, towards the appliance, and it's all working on port 443, so the risk to get someone in your network is minimized to a real minimum, as there is no firewall rule allowing the user going from the appliance, even, let's say, it's in his hands inside the network. And the second security feature which is there is of course multi-factor authentication. So even if people, like, are logging onto the appliance, they still have to use or can use a second factor for authentication. So what have you done? You secured the authentication access, and the last piece would be you can use application white and blacklisting on the target system. So let's say a user is authenticated and has access to a system, and let's say you gave him access in the time frame, or you gave him access using an approval workflow before he can access that system, and in the end, like, he has access to that system, and you still have full audit trail. But the best thing is, when that user accesses the system through our credential injection, he doesn't even know the password of the user he is using to log onto the system. to manage it. So this is our remote access solution, giving you the opportunity to give people access inside your network without the need of allowing them to really have a network rule going inside the network. And the second piece would be then, of course, our privileged credential management. I mean, if you imagine how many systems are using credentials in various ways, like let's just have a quick look at, for example, Windows as a platform. There are scheduled tasks, there are COM plus applications, there are web services, there are other services running. You have, for example, scripts, and those scripts have embedded passwords inside to log on to whatever other system. So you want to make sure that you discover all those passwords I just mentioned on your servers, on your system, on your whole network, on various platforms. So you really have a clear picture of what credentials are used in which tasks, on what service, and so on. And once you discover them, you would like to be able to get them easily into management so that our system takes over the control of that user, that it will rotate the password, that it will randomize the password every time this credential is used and injected in a session, for example, and it will stop people of having got the password and then, because no one is changing it all the time, they can then move to other systems. Then, for example, service accounts. I mean, how many services do you run on your IT network with some credentials? And those credentials have a lot of privileges on the target systems. I mean, let's say, like, for example, you have a backup software, and that backup software is running an agent, for example, and it's run under a user ID. That user ID is able, because I mean that's the purpose, right, of that tool. It needs to back up your data. So it has the right to read everything. It should back up. At least it can read. So all the critical data is readable by that user, which is used for backup. Wouldn't it be great if you have a solution which will, like in your maintenance frame, for example, you define the time frame, but it will shut down all your backup services, rotate the password, put in a new password in all the services, and bring them up again. Like this, just because you're defining accounts and you identify the users used for that. Then there is this thing of application security. I mean, how many of you have done some scripting at customers, automating some stuff, connecting to a database, gathering some information, and then with that information continue on another task? It's usually day-to-day business in IT, right? And most of the time we're forced to store those credentials into the script itself, into text file itself. If I just think of how many web applications have database connections stored in a text file on the web server, which is readable by I don't know whom in the company usually. So this is the last piece where you would want to take control of, that you can go into the script, that you have a solution which will automatically rotate the password of the user and change it within your scripts by securely connecting to the password safe solution, checking out the password and changing it in that script on a regular basis. I mean, you can imagine you have like spread over the network like hundreds of scripts with passwords and users inside, and with our solution we enable you to schedule a task which will rotate that password in those text files within seconds in your whole network every 5 minutes if you wish so. So this is the last piece where you really secured like the privileges. But when you think about security in IT, usually, like in the past, like what was the first thing like people started to do, like taking away administration rights from standard users, right? They gave them two users. You have your standard office user and then maybe your administration user. And if you're doing your tasks, you're really struggling often, and we all know that time is money, and we have a lot of pressure in our work usually, and try to get as much things done as possible. So if you increase the security like too much, and admins are forced to work with a standard user, but starting every task which needs admin privileges with their separated admin user, then things are getting a little bit complicated, and slowly by time, people tend to find their ways to make their work faster. They will start being the hacker. They will start searching for shortcuts, how they can, like, the simplest way, what I saw usually in companies for even personal admin users is like, you establish a rule that, for example, people are not allowed to, I don't know, use the last 10 passwords. And if the time comes to change the password, I saw admins changing their password like 10 times just to come back to the first password they had, because it's fast for them to type, and it has to have like, I don't know, because your rule is making the password secure, you want to have like 16 characters, and special characters, and numbers, and whatever. And applying that security made it even worse, because they try to make that thing running smooth. They want to get their work done. So the more you like have the problem, like, and you increase your security, the more people tend to be the hackers themselves because they want to get their work done faster. So, but in the other way around, like if you overlock it, you know, underlock it, it always has to be like, yeah, in a good balance where you have a really secure system, but still enable the users of using their native tools they're used to use their standard user to log on to that system. Maybe first time with a second factor to make it more secure, but afterwards the users won't care what the user is there getting injected for accessing the system. And now imagine you have a user, your internal administrator, for example, just the internal administrator, and this internal administrator is accessing one of the servers he's managing, okay? So he's logging onto our solution with his office user, and he's having a second factor, and he authenticates to that system, and then he gets a list of system he's allowed to access, let's say, and he's accessing that system. And once he's accessing that system, the system's credentials are injected into that session, so he doesn't know the password. But to make it even more secure, once he is on that system, that user used for logging onto the system is not even an admin user, it's a standard user, but being empowered by our software solution to, let's say, like, you achieve least privilege that, like, people don't have admin rights on their servers anymore. They have just admin rights for the tasks they need to do. And you might think, like, okay, this whole thing about, like, whitelist the good stuff, and I'm doing, I don't know, protect trusted apps. All that stuff might sound familiar to you because you have seen and heard about it, other solution. But what makes our solution like unique is that out of the insights and the usage, like with our quick start policy we have in place, you are enabled to install the solution, deploy that policy, and in the first step, nothing will change for the admin user in his work. He will be able to continue with the same tools he was using before, with the same rights he has before, with one difference. The difference is that you know exactly what this user is starting, what application he is using, and what is really the needed stuff he needs admin rights for. And then in the first step, you can start to finish the last step that users have too many privileges and to lower those privileges step by step. And the software is automatically learning, updating those profiles of what users are using in their daily work. So, to sum it up, the first thing you want to do is secure their access to the system itself, like getting rid of VPN solutions. You don't need them. The second thing would be like, once you secure the access, you want to make sure that the credentials are secured too, used to log onto that system. And the last piece was like, even when they log onto a system, you want to take away the privileges and give them just these privileges they need.